We're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Juju Show, episode 25. All kinds of goodies today and guests today, and we got lots of stuff to talk about today. So we don't go on and on. Let's get this party started. I'm Rick with Juju Engineering. Corey, hello. Who are you? Why are you here?
Hi, I'm Corey, and I am with Charm Engineering and Charm Tooling.
Awesome. We have questions for Corey. James, Mr. Beatty, sir. Welcome back to the party.
How's it going, guys?
Kevin, you're looking good up in your attic space today.
I am doing well in my attic space, and I'm rocking a Juju Solutions hoodie, so you know I'm prepared.
Oh man, so now I'm jealous. I should have went and got my Juju GUI hoodie. We could have done the whole thing. Yeah, see. Oh man. All right, and Rye, hello. I think this was your first time on said show. How are you, and where are you from?
Doing well. Yep, first time, and I'm also part of Charm Engineering.
Awesome. Well, let's get into the news. Exciting news. The biggest exciting of the news was releases. Juju 2.2.6 went out right after our show 2 weeks ago, which was to address a slight issue, and all the controllers and JAAS are all updated. So if you got your latest stable Juju release, you want some 2.2.6. Get your models upgrading, migrating, and getting all the goodness. And so make sure to go grab that so that you have the latest supported, as few bugs as we know about Juju out there. But the more exciting part was the 2.3 beta 2 that went out. And that went out, I believe, towards last week sometime. And it's got some fancy new stuff in there. So since it's betas, we can still drop new toys, which is most excellent. So a couple of new toys to highlight. Deploying bundles now supports a dry run flag, which is cool because it kind of goes, hey, this is what's going to go down. I like to think of it when you use the Juju GUI and you deploy a bundle, it gives you this summary when you go to hit deploy, and it says, I'm going to bring up 9 machines of this size, of this type, all that kind of stuff. You can get a little bit of an idea of what a bundle deployment is going to do from the CLI with this dry run and go, oh, that's what I expected, or holy moly, no, stop, abort, abort. Give yourself a little bit of, comfort there. On top of that, bundles can now also target specific machines. So the syntax around this is up for some test and love and debate. There was some conversation about that in the email thread. But the idea being bundles will continue to be the way they are. They have machines in them that can be defined, and if you deploy them, they will create those machines and be nice and reusable and redeployable. But in the case where you have specific machines brought up, or you're trying to put a second bundle down on top of machines a first bundle did because you're co-locating for density or anything like that, container-wise or whatever, you can now specify that machine numbers in the bundle can map to machine numbers in your existing model. So I can say machine 0 in this bundle actually needs to be machine 3 in my model, and you can do this when you at deploy time. So that's some kind of cool sexiness, particularly for those folks that play with MAS, manual machines, folks that are really throwing containers on top of things that are already deployed. The manual provider is a big one because you add the machines first using the manual provider, then you deploy to them. And so this would be a good way to target your bundle to the specific machines. If manual, you tend to have more particularness about what goes where because they're not just VMs getting floating up in some kind of cloud. So give that a try and give us some feedback. Let us know, how is that? How does that feel? And is it making your Juju experience new levels of awesome or not? And the correct answer is yes, just for the record. No ambiguity here. A couple other things. 2 weeks ago, we talked and demoed about fan networking on containers on public clouds, and we demoed it on AWS. And Beta 2 brought us it working on GCE as well. So this is more where auto-configured containers have a fan network out of the gate so that the same model you would deploy on MAS and it just works the way you expect it to will continue to just work the way you expect it to on AWS, on GCE, and as we add more providers, it'll be kind of just common. Your model should work. It's a representation of what's going on without the detailed specifics of the cloud of the actual, specific addresses and stuff on there. So this is kind of cool. I'm glad to see more providers get supported on that. And for all of you that do test runs and a lot of repeatable deploys, there are some updates where machine provisioning is now parallelized. And evidently in the past, it kind of brought up machines one at a time and made sure it got responses back from the cloud and such. Well, that's much more parallel now, which depending on your cloud of choice can go, seems to be proving anywhere from a 25% to 60% improvement in the speed of bringing up a deployment. So for those of you all doing CI and test runs and development and such, should hopefully really notice a big difference in your speed to get stuff up and validated using this new beta 2. So get your snap on, go get your beta 2. What are you guys most excited about in beta 2?
Machine mapping.
Machine mapping in the bundles.
Yeah, I'm one of those that has a bunch of stock machines laying around, and I love the ability to machine 2 equals real machine 6 or whatever. That's hot.
Sure.
I had a question about that, if I could.
Nope.
I seem to remember early in talks about that as a potential feature. There was some mention of possibly doing something where we have like logical machine names, since the numbers themselves can sometimes be a little confusing, especially if you're mapping a number to a number. Did that ever come to fruition, or did we decide that the machine numbers are more universal and consistent, and so we just went with that?
Yeah, I think that's where it comes down. We don't really have a naming mechanism in Juju for machines currently, because they do kind of come up with the numbers as they go, and as models grow, those numbers just increment, and tracking and maintaining those names over time as you tear stuff down or add units and such just doesn't really work real fluidly. And so the basics to enable this and get it out and get people using it is just to go, well, look, you've got a number in status, you've got a number in the bundle, tell me which one you want where, and we'll make that part work out. One of the replies to the thread was very much about, hey, I want to say that I want to deploy this to storage, where I want that to be kind of like, and we have this a little bit in MAS where you can tag machines, say this is a storage type machine. Generally, it's used for classifications, right? If your storage hardware tends to be, 2U racks with 8 disks, whereas your compute machines tend to be 1U racks with 2 disks or whatever in them, right? So you tend to tag these types of machines as a classification. This is compute-ish, these is storage-ish, these are networking-ish. They have, 16 ports on them, so these are the networking machines to use. And then when you deploy, you're like, get me a networking machine or get me a storage machine. And it's not which machine, it's one of a class with tags. And I think that's the closest we currently have in the idea of like naming things and deploy to the name. But that's not specific enough for this use case of, like Kevin's case, I've got random hardware laying around. I've manually added them to a model, and I really want this thing on the one that has, the CD drive in it or whatever, I know I'm giving Kevin a lot of credit there with his CD spinning application.
The CD drive, seriously, that's what we're going with? Yeah, that's really important to my charms.
You let me drive. That's what you get.
A train wreck.
I'm looking at my desktop, and the thing I see unique about it is it has a CD drive on it still. It's actually a CD drive, but I'm like, that's what my desktop has. If you have a desktop laying around, that might be what it is. Oh, carry on. Never mind. Ignore me. Let's see. Next up, there was an interesting discussion from Mr. Beatty here. Beatty, you've been working hard on some Elasticsearch charming. Did you want to talk a little bit about it?
Maybe not.
Commitment like that, you're definitely signed up now.
No, it's going really well. I was kind of pressed to get a multiple Elasticsearch deploys out the door, and the legacy upstream Elasticsearch charm wasn't cutting it, and I knew that we just needed something that was gonna be functional moving forward. So I just kind of put the pedal to the metal and did what I could to get something out the door that worked. That's about all that it is, but it seems to work pretty well so far. So yeah, go ahead and look at my namespace and hop on that and give it a try if you're so inclined.
Well, definitely.
It uses the new Endpoints implementation, which I know hasn't landed yet. So it's a whole hack where I'm just pulling charms reactive from tip, testing out some of the work that Corey's doing there. So production Elasticsearch, here we come.
Man, BD, can't you? Beta's not even bleeding edge enough. You're like, I've pulled this manual pull request that hasn't landed yet over into my production code.
Hey, man, things got to get out the door.
Yeah.
Can't be held up by the pace of software.
So, Corey, I hear you might be able to fill me in. What is this endpoint stuff?
Yeah, so
is in Juju, but I'm not up to speed on the endpoint.
Right. So this is an attempt to refactor the conceptual model that interface layers use. We found that when writing charms with reactive, and in particular when writing interface layers, using the old pattern where you had the conversations and you had to worry about scope and this and that, it didn't map well to people's mental models, and it frankly didn't model the actual way that relations work in Juju very well. So it was originally an attempt to provide an abstraction layer to make things a little bit more easier to work with in the common cases, but ended up just making all the cases more complicated and confusing. So this is an attempt to correct that by going back to something closer to the original or the actual model that Juju uses under the hood for relations. The name endpoint comes, it is similar in character to the terminology that's used in CMR or cross-model relations, which I believe you talked about in the previous Juju show. We found that there's some ambiguity when you say, a relation. Are you talking about, the relation endpoint that's defined in the charm, or are you talking about, established relations between two deployed applications? And then interface is pretty clearly the protocol that those relations use to communicate. So we decided to start moving forward with the endpoint as the name of the thing that is defined in the charm, that has a name that you make connections between the two charms to establish the actual relations in flight. So we're moving away from the name of relation base and going with endpoint interface as the class name. But it's currently, like James said, a pull request on Charmed Reactive, and there's ongoing discussion on that. I just put that into pound Juju. So feedback is welcome on that. It's still very much in progress, although I think it's coming close to being where we want it. It relies on the really nice feature that Stuart had added a while back to kind of facilitate this, which is the ability to have the relation or the interface class, base class, be pluggable, so that we can continue to support existing interface layers that use the old base class, while having new interface layers use the new class. One of the really nice things that it gives you is that you don't have to worry about the idea of scope anymore. It's just you have your another thing is there's no multiple instances of the class. With the old relation base, you would have, depending on which flag you were talking about, you would have a different instance of the relation, and that would have contextual information in it about which units were associated with the flag that you're talking about, and therefore which you're connected to. With the new endpoint style, you just have one instance. It's the global instance of that relation, that endpoint, and then that endpoint will have a list of the relations that are established on that endpoint, and then you can iterate over those, and each of those relations has a list of the applications that are associated with, or that each of the applications has its units, and you can drill down to the level that you need, and then there are helper methods from there if you want to do something like aggregating data across all of the units of a particular application, because you don't really care which unit you're talking about, you just want all of the data. There's helper methods for that, but for the person getting started, you would just have essentially the nested loops, but it makes it easy to get at the data in a consistent way without having to worry about which particular instance of this implementation am I talking about. Trying to think what else to say about it. Really, I mean, that's the main thing, is it's just trying to make it more consistent with the way that Juju models, which is there are established relations that have applications that have units in them. So,
and BD, you were playing with it on still a pull request and found it pretty cool.
Yeah, sorry, not to Corey's pull request, but yeah, it's basically, I feel like it kind of is what the reactive framework and maybe Charmers needed all along to be able to kind of hop on board and be able to kind of understand what is going on without reading all of the code in Charms Reactive, or like really understanding this, like these special metaphors that we have for certain things, right? And so I think that the whole conversations thing was pretty confusing. I've heard from newcomers that, you know, they just didn't really, yeah, they got the scope, they kind of got it, but they didn't got it, and then they didn't get it, and then when they went to like implement it or write a charm, it became more confusing and was kind of like a whole blocker to like onboarding new users. And I think getting rid of that and you know what Corey said, making this consistent and very like consistent and accessible way to get the same information that we want each time is just going to fast track all the new users and existing users. And gosh, it's working so good. I like how it's working already. I know people are going to nitpick it at a much finer granularity than I could. But you know, from what I've seen already and my experience with what you have up there, Corey, it's pretty sweet, man. Thanks.
Well, it's cool. I think what we'll do is we've got the link we'll put in the show notes and that Corey put in the channel to the pull request, which is, you know, if you're serious into this stuff and you're hacking on it and you want to have some input or get an early peek at kind of what people are thinking, go give that a try. It's definitely got a lot of good stuff. Like there's some good history and conversations going in across a bunch of people here. So, you know, participate. Aside from that, when it does land and such, I'm sure you can expect a lovely series of interesting blog posts and stuff from Corey and company about how to adapt and move to the new stuff. And maybe we'll come back on the show and do a little bit more show and telly at some point when it's a bit more official. So look forward to that. Well, that's cool. So if you're looking to play the Elasticsearch and you really, really trust James, go get his charm with his patched in stuff. That's awesome. And running his production Elasticsearch cluster. How big is that cluster you were throwing up? You were throwing up a pretty good sized thing the other day.
Yeah, it's like it's a 15 node cluster, so it takes up half a rack. Two 15 nodes basically.
So there you go. Hey, it's not like he's playing with it on my little Intel NUCs in my basement like I do. Cool. All right. Well, let's see. Now we have one other thing. Kevin, you wanted to chat with us about some of your notes around sharing data across snaps. Like you have been playing with this lately as you guys snap up the big data stuff, right?
Yeah. So this actually came up yesterday on the Juju IRC channel where BD was looking for. I think specifically, James, you were looking for application logs and where those logs might live or go. And we kind of, or I might have sort of side railed us into more generic sharing content between snaps, right? So if people don't realize this, there is a content interface for snaps where you can, one snap can provide a location that other snaps can mount, either read-only or now read-write, to help snaps sort of work together. So it becomes especially useful when you're dealing with confined snaps, because typically snaps can't escape their jails to go out and inspect other things on the file system. The content interface allows you to do that pretty well. One thing to note, snapd 229 is the snap version that is required. So let me look up what the versions are currently. So it's currently in candidate, right? Edge beta and candidate are all 229. So if you want to do some of this content sharing, it's gotten a whole lot better in 229. So you might want to consider going the candidate route for the core snap to support this. So what I wanted to do is show you what this looks like. I'm going to share my whole screen for you. What I've got are two big data applications that are snapped, right? One of them is Hadoop, and the other is an application called Pig. Pig is just a scripting language interpreter, right? People use it for writing quick script-like MapReduce jobs. The thing about Pig, and a lot of big data charms for that matter, is that they require Hadoop libraries. And for snaps, as many of you know, one design direction could be that you want to pack everything that your snap will need into the snap. So for an application like Pig, that means Hadoop has to come along with it, right? That's an enormous size requirement if you wanted to pack Hadoop into each one of your snaps. So what I'm going to show you is a better way to do that. Rather than having Hadoop packed into every single big data application that might require it, we are going to install one copy of Hadoop and via the content interface share the libraries and config locations and things like that with any snaps that need it. So what you'll see on the screen, I've got Hadoop installed. Disregard the version number. That happens to map to a version number of Apache BigTop. This is actually Hadoop 273, I think. And you'll see I've also got the Pig snap installed, right? So what I might want to do as a Pig user is fire up the interpreter and get to work on a Pig script. If I do that, the Pig snap will error out, and it says, hey, I can't find Hadoop, right? And I require Hadoop, so I'm going to stop you from even getting started. So if I run the snap interfaces command, this will show me all the interfaces that are available on my system, right? And the important bits are the last 8 lines or so. What you'll see there is that Hadoop, the snap, is providing 2 types of content that can be consumed by other snaps. One are the core set of libraries, the things you might find in user live Hadoop. The other thing is the configuration of Hadoop, where certain nodes exist, IP addresses, things like that. That's all living in the configuration directory. The reason these are separate interfaces is because the first can be read-only, right? It's just Pig needs a library, it just needs to include that lib path, right? The second, though, the Hadoop conf interface needs to be read-write because your Pig application or any of your big data applications that require Hadoop will need to be configured. That typically means that the snap user will want to set something special there, right? So if I take a look just at the snapcraft YAML for Hadoop, I'll show you how I expose these things. In the slots for Hadoop, whoops, one you'll see is that Hadoop content. It's read-only using the content interface, and it just simply shares the entire snap directory for Hadoop. First of all, is my font size okay? You guys see that? All right.
Yeah, it looks good here.
All right. The second interface that I briefly talked about was this Hadoop conf thing, and that's where I want to actually allow Snap consumers to write data into. And for that, I'm saying share my Hadoop configuration directory, the thing under Etsy, right? So here's what that looks like. Right now, you'll notice that nothing is connected to Hadoop, nothing is connected to the Hadoop conf. I'm going to recall a connection. So that's Snap Connect Pig, the plug that it needs, connecting to Hadoop, the slot that it's going to provide. So Snap will go off and connect those things. I'm going to enter a shell really quick inside the Pig application. So this is a confined snap. I'm going inside the snap to see what the snap sees. And if I look in the snap directory, you'll see that I've got these directories that are holding certain content that Pig will be able to consume. If I take a look inside of the Hadoop subdirectory, I've got the entire Hadoop charm has shared itself in a read-only fashion with Pig. So that's neat. What you'll notice in my writable location for the Pig snap is I've got this Etsy Hadoop configuration directory, but it's empty, right? Why is it empty? Because I haven't connected it yet. So let me connect this real fast. Here again, I'm calling Snap Connect. I want to connect the Hadoop conf read-write location to the Hadoop slot read-write location. So we'll connect those up really quickly, re-enter the shell once again, and now if I look in Snap Data, where I store my read-writable locations, I see that I've got some config bits. And that's nice because that allows me to get at all the configuration for Hadoop. This is writable by the Pig snap. It's in the Pig's snap data directory and is, again, via the content interface, sharing what Hadoop has exposed to it.
Wow.
So that's, I know, right? Mind blowing, right? So that's the gist of it. And now when I run pig, instead of it saying, I can't find Hadoop, ergo you're screwed, it will start up its Hadoop shell, or sorry, its grunt shell, which is the shell for pig. So there you go. Pig has launched itself. It has found the Hadoop libraries in a read-only directory, and it's also found the Hadoop configuration in a read-write directory. So that's the gist. That's what I wanted to sort of show and tell, since it just came up yesterday on the old internet relay.
No, it's cool as you scale out your more and more components. We're talking, are in snaps and they're trying to be confined and all that. You run into these what seem like solve problems that have to be kind of tweaked a little bit with the new ideas in mind. So that's a really cool walkthrough of how you get those things to communicate and still retain your confinement a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean, actually more than a bit. Retain your confinement.
Yeah, and just for many people run lots of big data applications at the same time, right? Pig, Hive, HBase, all of those things would have to have Hadoop baked in, right? Hundreds of gigabytes worth of data to be duplicated. So it's just nice that there is this interface that can share these read-only and read-write locations like this.
So I have a quick question about that. I noticed that when you specified a read location or a write location, it seemed like it was a list. Does that mean that on a single plug you can provide access to multiple different directories at once?
So right now, the way that the content interface is written, you can only do read-only sharing or multiple read-only shares, right? For read-write, even though it looks like it will take a list, and in fact it will take a list, multiple read-write directories aren't currently permitted. I think that has something to do with just how the AppleArmor profile allows mounting and things like that. I'm sure that's a feature that's being worked on, but at the moment, even though it looks like a list, for read-write directories, it needs to be a single item list.
Oh, cool. All right.
And Rick, I'll get you the content interface doc so you can include those in the show notes.
Awesome. That'd be helpful. Cool. I'm going to go share my little screen. All right. So step one, this was just that pull request we were talking about. And I wanted to show this off really quick, not show it, but just to kind of mention it. Have you guys heard of Multipass?
No.
Multipass is this kind of new canonical thing where you can run, it gives you a new command called Ubuntu, and that will create VMs on any platform. So it works on OS 10, it works on Linux Ubuntu, it works somewhere else. And the reason I want to bring it up is we had a new dev on the team who's working with us from another team, and he's a Mac person or whatever, and was like, hey, I want to work on the Juju GUI, which is just a JavaScript app. It should be able to work. And we're like, there's enough Node and tools and stuff. We assume Ubuntu, but you know what? The easiest way to get going is forget your VirtualBox, forget your, whatever else. Grab this Multipass thing. And so basically in a couple of commands, you get a really fast Ubuntu VM on your macOS machine. And then for our team, these are instructions on how to set up the Juju GUI to work inside that VM, right? So given how all that works. And so this has really got me curious because I play a lot with the Juju betas in snap form, but snaps don't work on macOS, which is where I like to demo stuff from to kind of show that all this stuff works on other platforms. Like you don't have to be a pure Ubuntu junkie through and through. So I have on my list for my Friday project here. I'm going to see if I can get this Multipass thing and set up Juju and snaps and use it as kind of like my tinkering environment for playing with the betas and stuff. But if you haven't checked this out, I wanted to just mention it. Maybe when I get stuff going, I'll come back and we'll actually show it off more in action or whatnot. At the moment, I've just kind of seen it and went, that's kind of cool. But that's not what I really want to talk about this week. Have you guys played with Multipass? Anyone play with it?
I haven't, but I'm super excited about it. Riddle me this if you can. Will Multipass allow me to do host LXD containers or run LXD on a Mac?
I would assume so, because my understanding is it's running a real thing. But again, this is what I get for mentioning like this looks cool. I want to look at it, and I haven't yet, so I can't say.
Okay, I'm going to look at it too because that would be awesome.
Definitely cool. I'm going to show you guys this real quick. I have this Grafana charm. Yay, Grafana. I've been hacking on it. This is my branch of it. It's what's on MySpace. And I'm going to add it to a new model on JAAS. And this is a bug. We're going to fix that part. So, okay, so it's untitled model. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to deploy it to GCE because I can, and hit deploy. All right, now that's not really sexy or interesting. I mean, that's just standard stuff. But this is sexy and interesting over here. Notice that as this is deploying, I've got my Grafana next steps document that pops up automatically here in the GUI. And I emailed the list on this and everything, but I want, because we have people that write charms here, and I'm going to start nagging the bejeebus out of everyone because this is really important, I think. This is our new Get Starting support built into the GUI, and it's part of the charm. You have a README file that everyone has right now, and they stick in it, what is this project? How do you, what does it do? Why do you want it? Like, how do I get it? How do I use it or whatnot? And really, it's gotten to be too much information in a place that's not accessible at the time you need it. So we want to kind of split this and go, look, at the time I deploy something, I want the next steps. Like if I deploy Grafana, the next things I should be doing is getting my admin password from Grafana and loading dashboards to it. And so while this is deploying, I'm getting a hint on what my next step should be to get going. And I can cut this out of the README and have it be more focused and not paginating down 5 screens of stuff to do. Let's do this again with another example that we've got out here. And here, let's go play with our normal Kubernetes. If I go grab the Kubernetes and add it to a new model.
Hey, real quick, is there some sort of GUI shell being worked on?
Don't ruin my dropping hints for future stuff. Whatever gives you that idea, Mr. I watch the commits go by BD. You're such a punk sometimes. Let me focus on my current thing. Oh, wait, mine already exists. I guess I need to get a new name. K8 stuff. That's not good. Come back. Aww. Let's try this again. Oh, man, I've been finding bugs today like no tomorrow. All right. I want to leave this because I broke it. And try it again. All right. Let's go fast. Oh, not that fast because let's do the staging one. Why not? Come on. Add the model. That bug. The guys love me today. I was preparing for this thing and I was filing stuff away. All right. My K8 stuff. Take 2 on Google because I want it there. All right. And I think I can. Here we go. So yeah. So here, the Kubernetes bundle. This is a bundle that supplied a GetStarted.md file as part of the bundle. And we pick up that, hey, so if you're using something in a bundle, the instructions for next steps may be very different than the charm itself, or whether or not you need the actual individual charm thing. So this talks about what this is. It gives you a link to details. And what's cool is it links you to the tutorial that we have on how to run Kubernetes. Like we've written a tutorial for it. So the bundle Get Started could be, hey, go look at the tutorial. It'll walk you through step by step by step. So the goal isn't to put the tutorial here. Because again, people use bundles for different purposes. You can imagine, like with Kubernetes, there's one about using it for just generically, and there's one tutorial about using it for GPU-based stuff, and the instructions are different, right, and all that. But what I want to encourage is for everyone who has a charm or a bundle out there that has some steps that are next up. Kubernetes is really particular because you need to go and get your kubectl set up and configure to talk to your cluster. Big data, there's got to be some good next steps of this is running. What's your next steps to prove that it's working? Maybe it's running some sort of smoke tool or something that might be your next steps on it, right?
Yes.
You wanted to speak.
No, I was nodding fiercely, followed by Prophet, down the road.
Down the road, Prophet. There you go. Now, there's a few things that we're working on. One, you notice I only did this on new models. That's a bug that the team's actively working on. I should be able to just add something else. If I were to add my Grafana charm to this current model, it should pop that up. Number two is that if I close it, I can't get it back again. There's designs that the team has on basically adding the links between the README and the Get Started material into the inspector so you can retrieve it back. You may even set up a bundle for somebody. And because we have Get Starteds on bundles, that means we're going to have to do some work to group things here by bundle so that you can actually pull up the bundles GetStarted.md versus the charms version of that, right? So there's some kind of exciting stuff that this is feeding through on putting more logical groupings of this together in here. Now, that's great from the GUI users. You know, the one thing that I hit, and I know some people hit, is like, man, this is great when I use the GUI, but I often use the CLI for things. And my answer to that would be is maybe next Juju show you might want to check out, because there might be some sort of demo about using a terminal from within the GUI where you might even be able to copy commands from your Get Started output and paste it into a terminal without ever leaving a browser. But that's all hypothetical. Come back and see me in 2 weeks. Cool. Everyone's going to go out today and go add some GetStarted.md files. Oh, one more bug that they're going through that the team's already landed a fix for, but it's not released. The file needs to be all lowercase at the moment. If it's capitalized like you would README, it will fail to load. That fix has landed, but it hasn't hit production yet. So just know that if you try it out and go, oh, mine didn't work, that may be why. Cool.
So this is just an automatic thing that gets seen. I don't have to set bundle metadata when I publish.
If the file exists in the contents of the bundle or the charm, the GUI will automatically pop it up and load it at deploy time, and then provide the link later on when we get the link into the inspector.
Sweet. So
have the file, and it will the user shall see it and have it available. So hopefully this cleans up READMEs and puts content at the user's hand when it's most useful, and helps with that kind of stuff. So help your users out. You love your users, right? They're your favorite people. Be kind to them. And with that, we have gone long today. Oh, no. So we had so much good stuff we dragged on. So I will let everyone go. All right, everyone, so long. Farewell. Have a good 2 weeks. See you next time. Bye.